Sableye is a dark ghost-type Pokemon that was released in Gen 3. You may associate Sableye more with Gen 5, where it received an enormous buff in the form of a new ability, Prankster. This is one of the best support abilities in the game, granting +1 priority to all non-attacking moves, and was enough to shoot Sableye all the way up to UU rank. Not bad for a Pokemon with such poor stats. You may also associate Sableye with its extremely powerful Mega form. When Sableye Mega evolves, it receives a huge increase to its defensive stats and gains the ability Magic Bounce. This is yet another one of the best abilities in the entire game. Not only does it grant immunity to status moves, hazards, and more, it bounces back these negative effects to the enemy. Mega Sableye is one of the only defensive Pokemon to ever have been banned to Ubers. It was that good. But back in Gen 3, when this little guy first came out, it didn't have any of these powerful abilities, and it was a pretty forgettable Pokemon overall, with very bad stats and the useless ability Keen Eye. Sableye is ranked down in NU in Gen 3, but don't put it past Gen 3 OU players to make horrible looking Pokemon like this somehow work in competitive singles. If a Pokemon can do a single unique thing that nothing else can, it probably has some random niche use in Gen 3 OU. One of the format's best players, ABR, has recently been experimenting with Sableye and testing it out on the ladder, where he's achieved very high positions. And in Kalos Invitational 7, the biggest Gen 3 OU tournament of the year, with money and pride on the line, ABR even brought Sableye to one of his sets. What could this terrible looking Pokemon possibly provide to a high level Gen 3 OU team? Let's take a look. But first, a pressing matter. Iron Mugulus, the most morally reprehensible Pokemon ever released, has recently discovered the technology of time travel. He was sighted all the way back in Generation 1, with what we can only assume is ill intent, and it looks like he was not alone. His entire crew has been discovered in Gen 1, and the stability of the metagame is reaching its breaking point. Like this video and subscribe to the channel so that we can put a stop to this as soon as possible. Thank you. Ghost is one of Pokemon's best types, especially in the older gens. Before defog and other hazard removing mechanics were introduced, Rapid Spin was the only way to remove hazards from the field, and since it's a normal type attack, Ghost types can block it from taking effect completely and prevent you from removing the hazards. Ghost types are also completely immune to Explosion, one of the most common moves in early generations. Back then, Explosion halved the enemy's defense when used, effectively giving it a base power of 500. And in Gen 3, if a Pokemon faints, the enemy is actually unable to act at all, so Explosion can even be used as a form of disruption. Ghost types are completely immune to Explosion, and if you correctly predict an Explosion and switch into your Ghost type at the right time, you basically just earned a free KO. Although Ghost is an amazing type with extremely valuable immunities, the amount of Ghost types available in Gen 3 is very limited. By far the best and most common Ghost type in the game is Gengar. It has a ground immunity thanks to Levitate, on top of the great immunities already provided by its Ghost Poison typing. It's very fast, and has a wide offensive and utility move pool. Gengar is the central Ghost type of the format, and if teams want to safely Rapid Spin, usually they need to take down Gengar first. The most popular Rapid Spinner in the format is Claydol. Claydol is a great defensive utility Pokemon thanks to its Sand immunity, Spikes and Ground immunity from Levitate, Stab Earthquake to hit common threats like Tyranitar and Metagross, Explosion to trade and keep up momentum, and of course, Stab Psychic to threaten its greatest rival, Gengar. Since Gengar is the most common Ghost type and Rapid Spin blocker, it makes perfect sense that a Rapid Spinner with access to a super effective stab option against Gengar has risen to the top. Claydol can threaten to 2-hit KO Gengar with Psychic, and it has good enough base special defense to handle Ice Punch and other coverage too. As a response to the rise of Claydol, players have started to explore different Ghost types in the format that match up better against it. The most popular option has been Misdreavus. Despite looking pretty bad, Misdreavus is very effective against Claydol thanks to its Earthquake immunity, and unlike Gengar, it's neutral to that Stab Psychic. With tools like Mean Look and Perish Song to trap certain Pokemon, and Calm Mind to boost up, Misdreavus is a decent choice as a spin blocker for more defensive teams that can be okay sacrificing Gengar's offensive firepower to be sturdier against Claydol. Dusclops is another option. Though it lacks Levitate like the other two Ghosts, it is very bulky and has the ability Pressure, which is great for stallier teams. It can improve your matchup against Snorlax as well, thanks to Will-O-Wisp and Imprison, and it matches up pretty nicely against the other common spinner in the format, Starmie, thanks to good bulk and stab Shadow Ball to threaten it super effectively. Dusclops is usually only used on very stally teams, but it's not a bad Pokemon at all. And this is where Sableye comes in. Sableye probably seems much worse than all these other options for ghost types, but it does actually have some unique qualities that set it apart from the competition. With a dark ghost typing, Sableye is completely immune to Claydol's Psychic, which can give it a nice entry point if the enemy assumes that your ghost type is Gengar. This also has some benefit against Pokemon like Celebi and Jirachi who often use Stab Psychic. In response to these alternative ghost types being used, some Claydols have started to run Shadow Ball instead of Psychic. While this makes you a bit worse against Gengars that carry Will-O-Wisp, it at least allows you to hit all the ghost types super effectively. Except of course, for Sableye, who is neutral to Shadow Ball. Sableye also has a pretty good move pool. This is the only ghost type with access to Recover for reliable and immediate healing, which is very nice. Gengar is prone to getting chipped down, and the other alternative ghosts both rely on Rest for healing, which leaves them vulnerable. Sableye has a much better healing move at its disposal, and another great option that Sableye has is Knock Off, a very uncommon move back in Gen 3. Knock Off can be used to remove leftovers from the enemy Claydol or anything that switches in to respond to Sableye. This is a fantastic move that can help you win the long game by permanently crippling the enemy Pokemon and removing their chip heal. Unfortunately, Sableye doesn't get access to Will-O-Wisp in Gen 3, unlike fellow ghosts like Gengar and Dusclops, but it at least gets some decent options to fill out its moveset. Seismic Toss lets you deal good damage, and Psych Up is what ABR has used in the last slot to help out against Curse Snorlax, copying their boosts and letting you wear them down with Knock Off, Seismic Toss, and Sand Chip. This could also be helpful against Calm Minders in certain situations, if you can manage to live a hit. Despite these good qualities, Sableye is obviously not easy to fit on teams, due to its terrible stats and low speed making it very exploitable. Although it's pretty solid against Claydol, a simple Earthquake and chip damage from Spikes is enough to greatly threaten the little guy. But ABR's results with this Pokemon speak for themselves. He has topped ladder with Sableye, and in his set against M-Dragon for CI7, one of the best Gen 3 players in history, with money on the line, he loaded up Sableye in Game 1, and it did its job perfectly. It blocked Rapid Spin, knocked off Skarmory and Blissey, and even healed up, acting pretty decently as a defensive wall. What I love about Gen 3 OU is that it really rewards you for thinking outside the box. Although it may seem like a metagame with less options than later gens where things are restrictive, you always seem to see these innovations, strange moveset and Pokemon choices at the highest level of play. It's a metagame that never stops evolving, and I always look forward to these tournaments because you really never know what you're going to see next. What do you think of Sableye in Gen 3 OU? Who's your favorite ghost type in the format? And what would you like me to talk about next? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching. Thank you to the patrons. Become a patron to appear on this excellent end screen, alongside your favorite Pokemon.
The money got different, 'cause of what I'm spending. The money got different,
oh, it's
'cause of what
Megaphone!
I'm spending.
Whoa,
The money
KO
got
by
different,
one hit! It
'cause
scattered
of what I'm
Spike!
spending. The money got different.